In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Hello, viewers, and welcome to the program tonight. Tonight's program is very, very special. You know, there are so many young people who have so many broken lives and are looking for a way back. And often they're not going to listen to anyone except people like the beautiful sister in Christ that you are about to meet, Z, who found her way back. And like all who have found everything that they've ever been looking for in the arms of the Heavenly Father, Z's story is about God and what He can do in any life than it is even about her own overcoming. So welcome, Z, and my daughter, Ashley.
Hello.
Hello. So give us a little intro, ladies. What are we going to be hearing about today?
This is my friend Z, and I just want to make sure, Mom, I can get some audio feedback on your side. So if you could turn your audio down a little bit while I talk. Z was baptized into Christ in April of 2024 and is currently going through chemotherapy for cancer. And as I've gotten to get to know her in our local congregation, I've just been really impressed with her perspective. And she had mentioned to me about writing a book about her life. And I thought that a podcast would be a really great introduction for her to tell her story and how God has worked in her life. So I have some questions I've prepared.
Oh, good.
We're just going to let her talk and then focus on what God has done. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And being willing to do this. So it's helpful to walk through your life story so that people can see the perspective of where you're coming from when you're answering questions and how you view God. So how would you describe your childhood? What are some formidable things that happened that kind of like made you who you are?
Definitely a lot of suffering. There was, my mother was pretty much decided like she was not going to choose me while even in her womb. And there was some consequences to that I've had to deal with. And then it just didn't get any better after I was born. I went into foster care at 3. I didn't get adopted till I was 7. Between those 4 years, there was just a lot of heartache, a lot of abandonment, just a lot of tears, and I didn't have any support at that time. Getting adopted at 7 into a family that it's different. Like, this is how God worked, where He took me out of a situation that I couldn't handle, and the way He created me versus my sister. My sister came like 8 years after, and the comparison like between us, she's more gentle. She's like, I'm gentle, but like I just don't look gentle. My sister, you look at her and you can just, kind of tell she is just like the most, you just don't want nothing to happen to her. She's like a little baby lamb. But we weren't raised together. She was raised from a different upbringing than I was. If I had to compare between both of my biological mother and my adopted mother, definitely different scenarios. I kind of compare my mom to be kind of just mentally, there's just a lot of unresolved trauma there that she just chose not to get help for. Biologically speaking, I just see evil in my biological mother, and I think God was protecting me when he took me out of that situation and put me into another one that was going to build me up to lead to today. So basically get adopted at 7. I didn't have any support. I was just kind of just going through, like, not only no support, but being verbally abused by my adopted mom. My siblings, I was definitely way different from them. Definitely a very meek child. I definitely kind of looked to music during that whole period of being with them. And that music, that's, everybody has their thing that they turn to. And, I chose music. I didn't have it in my heart to choose drugs because that's what my mother chose over me. So I kind of had this thing against it. Alcohol, not really, but I guess that's a good thing given my kidney diagnosis. So music was, I feel like, the healthiest thing that I could turn to during that time. So, and then I guess during my teenage years, I left all that. I moved to Chicago. I dealt with homelessness. I've dealt with literally surviving on like one McChicken a day back when it was $1. I didn't have anybody, like, so during like my years in Chicago, which would be, I would say, my early 20s, I feel like that's when everything that was hurting inside of me, it turned into anger. I reached a point where I wanted to protect myself from the world. So I just kept layering up, putting all this armor on. And, I wish I can see my old self walking down the street. I definitely looked like I carried a lot that I wasn't even approachable. I like to say, I'm like, I definitely relate to Shrek a lot. I definitely get it. So just basically, back in Chicago, I knew that I was kind of just like this wild child. Like I knew that I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be near my relatives because of all the toxicity. I didn't want to be around all that. And so I left out to the Midwest, and I experienced life in the LGBTQ community. As mentioning homelessness, I was very irresponsible and reckless with my decisions. Just going out, and it was kind of just like, I'm just going to go out, wing it, and make these mistakes, and I'll figure it out when it's time to. And that's just how I looked at my approach back then, where I was very impulsive. Like I was a runner. When things didn't work out, I would run away, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I shut myself out from people throughout, even before doing therapy. So Chicago, I ended up realizing, I'm like, I'm homeless. This is not me. This is not what I want. And then I moved to Wisconsin, and I met somebody there, and I was in a relationship with them. And that relationship it didn't work. It was my most serious relationship. But at that time, I was just not ready to have friendships, relationships. I didn't trust anybody. I definitely pushed a lot of people away. And I think I got to a point where I reached where I'm like, I'm so tired of being angry. It takes a lot of work it's just more work to be angry, and it's heavier. It's definitely heavier to be angry. And but at the time I didn't know how to let it all go. I let everything, all my trauma weigh me down to the point that I had the perspective of like, before becoming a Christian, I hated people. I didn't think of myself as a victim. I was never mad at God for the things that I went through, because even, and just full disclosure, like, even I've always been a believer in God, always. Even in my relationships, it's very kind of ironic that's my ignorance back then, to be like, I believe in God, yet here I am partaking in this forbidden relationship. But I've always stood by. I truly believe that, it's no surprise that I'm here today, because I feel like in my heart I've always desired righteousness. And God established my steps, whether good or bad. Like the bad, like it led me here. So to me, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's worth it. I would say everything that I suffered for, it was worth it. Because to me, it doesn't compare to what Jesus went through. And that's just the way I look at it now. I'm like, this man died for us, and he was perfect. And, that's love. And, for me, it's amazing how I feel like this is how, like, God was there for me. So I wasn't surrounded by love. So when you're not surrounded by love, you're like, how do I know what love is? You don't know. And then when it comes at you, you don't know how to take it. You don't trust it. You're like, what do you want? You're questioning everybody. Gosh, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're good. You're good.
No,
right now,
I'm trying to drive a point.
Well, you started going to therapy. You were in Wisconsin in your relationship. Did you go to Arizona after that?
No. I came back here briefly because I got into van life, and van life was, so I guess so I started therapy in Wisconsin. I was 28 years old. Before therapy, there was, right before therapy, one morning I got up and I was so depressed. I was so depressed that I got to a point where I begged God. I went deep into prayer and I begged him to just like, I'm like, please take away like this pain. Because it was deep inside of me. I was one of those that I thought that if I buried it, it would just go away, but it planted this hate inside of me, and I didn't like myself, and and I was aware of that. But at one point, like, therapy, you have to be ready for it. And therapy, everybody has like the way I tell people for therapy, I'm like, you're there to listen to yourself. The therapist is not there to give you the answers. This is you literally choosing to open up, dig deep into the traumas of what you've been through, the whys, your needs, things like that. So if you go in there with the mentality of complaining, you're not looking within yourself. You're looking outwards. And that's what we need to do when it comes to loving. Like, I like to say, I'm like, we look outward when we're supposed to be looking inward, and we look inward when we're supposed to be looking outward. And a lot of people, I tell people, I'm like, my mom could have had us living under a bridge, but if she gave me like all the love in the world, living under that bridge wouldn't have mattered to me, because the material things don't matter to me. It's the love. And everybody's focus today is just on anything else, like the worldly things. But they're the same ones saying that, oh, like, there's no hope. There is hope. You're just looking in the wrong direction. And it's, becoming a Christian, even prior to becoming a Christian, I've always, like, evolving has always been important to me. Getting better. I would say the way I handled myself out in the world, God allowed me to go through these doors and try it. Therapy, learning how to ride a motorcycle, traveling. So I was chasing things in the world, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to therapy, and I'm going through like my trauma, and I'm feeling like I'm healed, in a worldly sense, of course. And then I'm like, okay, the bike's cool, but I'm not, there's something missing there. Let me move to Arizona. And Arizona is what brought out my spiritual awakening. I love sunsets. I love them. I don't know if you've ever seen an Arizona sunset before. No, please make your way out there one day. And I started envisioning Jesus, what it would look like if Jesus came back. That's how, and then, so that, like, God's beauty is like what brought me closer. And then that's when I started, I'm like, wait, it was crazy, like, me driving in that moment to be like, wait a minute, like, God is real, and what am I doing? Like, I kind of felt like that was like the opening to, I felt good about taking that path. But there were struggles, like, in the beginning. So when I picked up the Bible, it was in June of 2023. So some people kind of get this misconception that my cancer, like, the reason why I went to God found Christ, it was because of cancer. Not at all. The timing, God's timing is just impeccable. I started reading the Bible in June. So how I felt about the Bible was, I was just frustrated with myself because I couldn't interpret it. It was hard for me to read, but I felt like in that moment, I'm like, it just felt so important to me. I'm like, no, I have to understand this. Like, I don't care how, and that's where the different translations come in, So I read what was easiest to me, and I downloaded, I didn't go out and buy one. I downloaded it on my phone, and I started out with the plans. If I felt angry one day, I would read something about anger. And it's literally like, you can literally, if you put it into your routine of, like, you wake up in the morning, take 5 minutes, and then like 5 minutes before you go to bed. And you do that every day. And it may not seem like a lot to people, but like, that's a big step. Like, that is the biggest little step, like, that you could take. And I seen myself improving in what I was reading. I was understanding it. But at the time, I still wasn't ready. So June, so I'm going about my work life. I'm doing my reading.
Can I ask a question?
Good.
When did you get your first cancer diagnosis, and when did you pick up the Bible?
So I picked up the Bible in June of 23. I got diagnosed. So I noticed that I was feeling symptoms of, I was bleeding. And I did not go to the hospital right away. I was typical millennial where I'm like, I gotta work. And then I started to feel more symptoms. So I believe I started bleeding in September. I did not go to the hospital until January
of 2023.
2024.
Oh, okay. So you had been reading the Bible for several months before you got diagnosed with cancer. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then I tried so when I got diagnosed, the first time my feeling was, so I wasn't baptized yet. I was still in that moment, I was still giving the Bible a chance, but I wasn't like fully confident. I was still searching. And so this cancer diagnosis put a pause. And I remember getting that call. I actually called. So they did a colonoscopy, and they were like, okay, we're going to send it in for a biopsy. The pathologist was like, okay, we haven't gotten your results yet. We're going to schedule you a month ahead. Said, okay. I get a call that same day telling me that I needed to go in right away. Right from and it's crazy. Right then and there, I knew it was cancer. Obviously I needed to go in. But when you hear those words, when not being a Christian, but still like knowing that God is real and I'm not saved, I was acknowledging that. And hearing those words come out of a doctor's mouth, like not being a Christian, is the worst. It's the worst feeling. And but my thought process on getting baptized was I didn't, so the first time I got diagnosed, I didn't think that I was going to die. I still tried focusing on Christ and this cancer diagnosis. So I'm like trying to juggle both at the same time. And I'm like, no, like, what if Jesus comes back? So I'm like, I'm not scared about dying. It's more of like, when he comes back, I want to be ready. The cancer didn't matter to me as much as being baptized. But at the same time, being diagnosed in the beginning, it was scary. It was the first time I felt like I had no control over my life. And I didn't have any insurance in Arizona. I couldn't afford it. I struggled in Arizona. But I will be grateful for Arizona because it's part of my journey of what led me here. So again, the struggle was worth it. Each step, it was worth it. But so I couldn't stay in Arizona. I tried to. But at the time, so I still had a relationship with my adopted mom, and I never could feel like I could ask her for anything because she was never there. When she was there, she wasn't there. And when she was there, you felt it in the worst negative way. And so I don't ask her for things unless I am desperate, because I don't want to go through that heartbreak of being disappointed. So I try to mitigate that. But I think in that moment, I really needed her. Even, it's so crazy, like chance after chance, like knowing how she is and still reaching out to her, like I need you. And I'm giving you this opportunity. This is me giving you a chance. I'm here waiting for that relationship with you. And you choose yourself. And that's what my adopted mom has always done. She's chosen herself. She told me one day, she's like, I don't really call you much or ask if you need anything because you're a strong person. And I'm like, strong people, this is where awareness like needs to be the strong people, the ones that you're like, man, they got it. Like, those are the ones that you really need to question, because those are the ones you're like, how much are they really carrying? And but some people carry it beautifully, because they don't want the world, they don't want to put that on anybody else. And with my mom, it was just heartbreaking. That was like, I felt like that cancer diagnosis, like it was her chance to redeem herself. And so I call her and I'm like, look, like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Right now I'm feeling overwhelmed. And that's not me. I am so used to being in a situation where I'm like, and that's my survival mode. But this was the first time that I'm like, God definitely stopped me in my tracks, and he established my steps to come back here. And I fought so hard not to come back here, and because of the trauma, I didn't want to be in the same state as my mom. It was too heavy. It was too painful. But I think, like, so realizing, so she said she would go to Arizona, but then I found out she ended up lying. She told me she couldn't get a flight out the next day. I went and checked myself. There were many flights going out. And it turned out she just lied about, she wanted an excuse. And I struggled. I'm like, my heart was like so broken, with the resentment that I felt towards her. I didn't want to resent her, but that's where all this led. And, when I found out she lied, and she called me the next time, her name, the mom name popping up on it hit me. I'm like, man, I resent her. And from that moment on, I felt like I couldn't even answer another phone call from her. And it was more heartbreaking than the cancer diagnosis. That's how much love means to me. This cancer is nothing. It's not about my cancer. It's about, it's more to it. There is more to it. And I want to spread that. Even if it means opening up this, like, vulnerability. Being vulnerable is the scariest thing for me. Nothing else scares me but being vulnerable around the wrong person. And just feeling like, going throughout your whole life, like over 30 years of not feeling loved. But you look back and you're like, God loved me the whole time. It was people that chose not to love me. It was people that chose not to follow him that didn't love me. So for me to be in that for over 30 years and to come to the truth, I mean, that shows that God was with me the whole time. And that's just how he worked.
You're doing so good. This is incredible.
I don't know. I feel like I'm like,
you're doing great. So you're leaving Arizona, you're coming back to New England. Mm-hmm. You don't want to come back to New England, and you haven't gotten baptized yet.
Right. So I go into surgery, and so I go into the hospital. Well, back in Arizona, I packed up everything. Friend of mine that I met over 14 years ago we've been close friends but distant because I traveled a lot. I was living in Chicago. She was here the whole time, but it would be one of those things. I would come back once or twice a year. We'd have lunch or dinner, and then I'd go off and she'd follow me on my Facebook shenanigans. And but when she found out that I had cancer, she's like, look, like, I know the situation with your relatives. I think it would be a bad idea for you to go stay with them, because the stress that you would go under would just trigger that cancer. So when I made the decision, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. So I decided to go on short-term disability with my job. So I kept Arizona as an option to go back to my job. I was working for Honeywell at the time. And so I'm like, just for a backup plan, I've always been a person that's like, I got to have my B, C, D, everything. That's just like my survival mode. But so that was an option. So I sell all my stuff and I pack up my car and I drive from Arizona to Massachusetts. And I hung out for the weekend, and I went into Brigham and Women's in Boston in February. Then I got my surgery, and so I was there in that hospital for 16 days. And first week was running tests. They didn't have enough stuff from Arizona to be able to be confident in, like, how are we gonna approach this. So February 22nd was when I went into surgery. And so I'm thinking, and after that, I get out of the hospital. They're like, can't go to work. You can't lift anything for 6 to 8 weeks. That's hard. Me, I love working. I can be a little stubborn when it comes to working, but I'm like, I'm going to be a good noodle, and I'm going to listen to the doctors, and I'm going to let my body recover the way it's supposed to. But so in my head, I'm like, okay, baptized. So getting out of surgery, I'm like, okay, cool. I got that handled. Back to the Bible. So me, I'm thinking I'm okay. No, my doctors are like,
You're cured. Did they say you were cured at that point?
My doctor said cancer-free.
Cancer-free.
Right.
And this is February of 2024.
Right.
This is February of this last year.
Right.
Yeah, of this year.
Mm-hmm. This year.
This is insane.
This year. Yeah. I know a lot has happened within the year. I kind of had to look back a couple weeks ago. I'm like, wow, a full year of cancer, and it doesn't even feel like it. That to me is like, that's God's strength right there, and his peace too. I feel like people think I am so weird when I say that this cancer is a blessing. This cancer has done so much good for me than any other years in my life. This cancer is worth it. This cancer is not the worst thing in the world. Being separated from God is the worst thing in the world. And I don't care how I have to suffer to be closer to him. And people would be like, well, if God loves you, why would he make you suffer? Like, that's how we're built up. That's the beauty. I find beauty in that, in the work in that, to come out of something that, like, evil, around evil people, and to be able to find the light. I mean, and God led me there each step of the way. Whether it was through a good door or a bad door, it doesn't matter. Everything that I went through, like I took up motorcycle. I drove for two seasons, and like everybody calls us kidney donors. I'm like, well, joke's on you. I can't donate my kidney. I got a kidney disease. So, but even like being in that, there's just no love in worldly things. You know, there was no love in the biker scene. There was no love in the LGBTQ community. You ask, their slogan is, what is love? Love is love. You ask them what is love and they can't even answer it. And it breaks my heart. It's not a judgment thing. It breaks my heart to be like, what happened to you? What happened in your life to steer you this way? Because you weren't loved correctly. And everybody has their different forms of suffering. My suffering, your suffering could lead you to the light if you choose that. And I chose that because I chose love. I chose the right love, and God's love is the only right love. Not in, there's no love in any other community if it doesn't have God in it. And I won't be a part of that. To be able to come from that and look at it and feel shame for partaking in some of those things. And I don't care if it's like that's my ignorance. It was my ignorance, and I'll carry that shame, not too much to the point that it'll drag me down. But if you don't feel shame in something, then that you're doing wrong, then you really need to check your heart. That's something I won't speak ignorantly on, because that's not my heart. So I don't understand it. It's not for me to understand. But it's something that I can pray about. Yeah.
So you're doing, this is like so fun. So, talk about the journey of, if you're ready to, finding a church that would baptize you. Cause I think that was an interesting part of your.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. Talk about the beauty in that.
God definitely had his hand in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So when being baptized, I feel like I didn't answer your question before.
No.
I'll get to it.
No, you are getting to everything.
So getting out of surgery, I'm like, okay, back to Christ. I need to be baptized. Being baptized was like, it had to be right. It had to be by the right person that I knew that could lead me to the truth of the importance of baptism. And I was ready. I was still going through some things, like some things I still needed answers to. But I still had faith. Like, it was so important for me to be committed. And I still, no lie, I struggled with, in the beginning, I'm like, 35 minutes to get to church? No way. I'm not driving 35 minutes to get to church. And then I still attended. It was like, what was that? The gospel meeting.
Oh, yes. There was a gospel meeting that the church, the Greater Providence Church of Christ, had with Joe Works.
Yes, Joe Works.
And you went to Lee Tosti's house that day. How did you find Lee Tost? How did you find this church, though?
Okay, so I have a friend, my friend in Illinois, that I worked with at Staples, which I lived with her for some time, which happens, her grandma happens to be a Grams to me. And so she became a Christian before I did, but we were still in each other's lives, but not as much. She ended up getting married, having kids, but we would talk every now and then. And when I got diagnosed, I didn't have a relationship with them, because I felt like I was still in my hurting stage of, if you're gonna say I'm family, then treat me like family. And I went through a stage where I'm like, man, they don't understand how hurtful their actions can be, because this is like a family. Like some people, like, they don't know what they have, and like they take it for granted. And me coming from like not having a family, like it means a lot to me. I cherish the small things, but with
so you're looking, no, you're good. So you're looking for a church, and she tells you about the church in Rhode Island. But didn't you go to another church and ask them?
I did. So the first church I went to was the friend that I'm living with, 5 minutes down the road. And I go, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it, but I was still worried. I'm like, I got to get baptized. And at that time, I didn't know really. There was still some ignorance going on, but my friend back in Illinois, so being a Christian for years, I'm talking to her, I'm telling her, like, I'm like, I feel like there's some red flags there, but I don't know. I just feel it. So I was telling her about some things. She's like, wait, did you say like woman pastor? She's like, women aren't allowed to be pastors. And so I'm like, so at the time, this was so serious to me that I was like, if you tell me a scripture, if you tell me something that's from the Bible, you better tell me which verse, where to find it. Because coming from the world, you can't trust people. So I'm like, if you can't tell me where it's at in the Bible, I'm not listening to you. So I was very on point with not being led the wrong. I was very aware of that, to not be led wrong. And so this first church I went to, me and her talked. She wanted to know my story. So I had to ask. I was like, I don't mean to be offensive, but I thought women can't be pastors. And she gave this answer like, well, I went to school for it. So, and then another red flag for me was when she wanted to move the date.
Yes.
She wanted to wait like a month
to baptize you.
Yeah.
You were like, can I get baptized now? And she's like, oh, we'll baptize you as part of our like baptismal service.
Yep. So I was like, there's something I'm still going through ignorance here. Like, I'm like, there's something wrong. I don't know if it's my worldly intuition or what, or if God was giving me a little like, nah, you have to, something wrong here. Like, trust your gut. So I'm talking to my friend, and she's like, please, like, let me, like, my pastor, like, he has connections. He can find you something. I was like, okay, I'm going to let you do that. So she gave me, she talked to her pastor. He reached out to somebody, I guess, I hope I'm getting it right, somebody in Vermont. And then they're like, okay, that's too far for her. Let me reach out to somebody in Rhode Island or something. And then it got to Haven, and then it got to Lee. And then my friend gave me his phone number. I called him, and I'm like, I'm calling about a baptism. And we talk, we schedule something for Friday. I meet with him for 2 hours. We talk about baptism, what it means, the things that I'm struggling with. And he's like, well, I feel good about it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I go to his place, and like, some people would be like, you went to some random guy, like, you out of all people went to a random guy's house, and he says he has a bathtub in his basement. Isn't that like red flags? And no, not at all. I felt really good about this. Like, I'm like, nothing was going to stop me from getting baptized. Like, nothing. So I did. And he invited me to the remaining 3 days of the meeting.
The gospel meeting we were having that weekend. Yeah. In
my head, I'm like, I don't think I'll be going to these, like, all three. I'll maybe go to one. But I ended up going to all three. And I'm like, this is the right church. Like, something in my heart, I'm like, I need to stay here. I need to drive 35 minutes. I will drive 35 minutes to get here. no problem. And so that's what a lot of people do. They're like, let me look for the closest church. I'm like, if you're going to spend your time, like, do it, spend your time right. It's like, and God, like, spending it with God the right way, like, that's the most important time that you could have. So why are you're defeating the purpose. You're wasting your own time by going, like, to this church that they don't follow Christ the way they should. They don't follow the traditions. They don't honor it. And so why go? Like, why? This is you. If somebody's going to spend their time, like, seriously, they should take it seriously when it comes to God and kind of do the research and not just go about like robots and be like, oh, church 5 minutes down the road, how convenient, save me some gas. Like, so yeah, that's how I came about finding church.
And then, so you're baptized,
Mm-hmm.
and then you find you're having symptoms of cancer again. You've been told you were cancer free. So
so speaking to the doctor after the surgery, they diagnosed me with stage 2 colon cancer. So the situation behind that, they were like, we took out 57 non-cancerous lymph nodes. The tumor itself was 7 centimeters. That's the size of a peach. And so they were like, well, we took out, like, for precaution, we took out lymph nodes and they were non-cancerous. They seen nothing else except they called it a benign tumor in my liver. But because it was small, they were like, it's too small to see if it's cancer. I had asked my doctor about it. So going back to the follow-up about the surgery and what they saw in the biopsy, they were like, you have stage 2 colon cancer. This is why it's stage 2. The only reason why it was stage 2 was because of the size of the tumor. But they were like, anything. So they were confident that this had not spread. So they were like, you can do chemotherapy. It's tricky for stage 2 because for stage 1, they would be like, no, but for stage 2, it's complicated. So in the beginning, I was like, should I do it? Should I just be like cautious and just in case? And then I started getting sick from the chemo within 2 days, and I couldn't tolerate it. So my doctor, we're going through it, and he's like, they took out 57 non-cancerous lymph nodes, and there's nothing else on the scans that suggests that this spread. And he's like, I think you're good. I said, okay. So I'm like, me picking up, going back to, I'm like, okay, this is through moving on with my life. And so I'm like looking at my life like, okay, I can't afford to stay here. So I was thinking about moving. So I'm like, oh man, I'm possibly going to be leaving this congregation, but I still had hopes to find another congregation that, was just the right fit. And so I went for a follow-up. So my doctor was like, we don't see anything now, but let's check on that liver in 3 months. So I have my follow-up with him, and he's like, we'll do an MRI. MRI comes out. There is a tumor growing in my liver at 2 centimeters. They didn't know that it was cancer yet, but given the fact of the growth of it, the how fast it was growing, it was a sign of cancer. But they sent me in for a biopsy to confirm, and it confirmed it was stage 4 colon cancer, and that the cancer had spread to my liver. So that benign tumor that was in my liver was actually cancerous. A lot of people would be like, oh, they should have caught that. No, like, it's technology can only do so much. And I'm not going to be mad about it. I wasn't mad at my doctor about it. A lot of people would have been, but I'm like, it's so funny. Like the more I go into, the harder the suffering is in this, the more I feel like I'm growing. So it's worth it. It's worth it to me. And people think I'm weird. Like my doctors, like I'll be like, man, this cancer is such a blessing. And they're like, do I need to call like a psych ward or something? And I'm like, I'm not suicidal. I just like, I have hope. And it's way beyond like nothing. There's nothing in this world that can make me nothing, not even any desire that I have. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for me to give up, because I came from that. It's like, what's that scripture, like going back to
like a dog returning to its vomit,
right?
Yeah,
that's basically what I would be doing. There's no way that I don't have that in my heart, you know. And it's scary when people, I guess I'll talk about, I want to say something about kids growing up in Christian families. That is like the biggest blessing that God could give you. And they're thinking that these kids are thinking that it's fun out there, and it's not. It's not. I was not having a good time without a relationship with God in my life. My heart feels more whole than it did in the past year, than, you know, my like 32 or 33 years of existence. Like, and to me, I can say that that's all worth it. All that was like worth it, to get to that moment. Like me dealing with this cancer, for me, it's weird. It's a weird feeling. Like it's that piece to being sitting there, something's happening to you and you're not even freaking out about it. I'm like, okay, I'm just rolling with the punches, like, and I'm okay with that. And that, I don't find that unloving. God is not unloving. God is not, he is fair, and people think that he's not. And people think that they are owed something, and we don't like, God doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't. People are like, what did he do for me? He's literally allowing you to stand here for a chance at eternity with him, and you're squandering it. You're over here saying, like, what has he done for me? He has created you, and he is good. Everything from him is good. It's us that make it bad. It's us. If we would use money for the good of it, then it would be different. If we were kind to each other and like loved each other, it would be different. If we followed his commandments, there's a reason why it's structured for, you know, like I could go back to the LGBT community to be like, well, why was I born this way? And it's like for me to be like, you know what? I don't know why he didn't create it to be another way, but I'm not going to complain about it, because those relationships, like they don't matter to me on this earth, because they're not, it doesn't align with God. And anything being in, so the LGBTQ community, I got to a point where I started to feel embarrassed. I started realizing, I'm like, this isn't working. This isn't like, and this was me after going like my therapy. I'm like, I'm healed. I'm maturing. I'm like, I'm not the problem. And then for me to like go into it with that perspective and be like, okay, so I did my part in my healing, and I'm going back into this and it's still not working. Something's wrong here. And I got to a point where I'm like reading God's law. I'm like, this is why it doesn't work. It's going to fall apart. anything without God, it's going to fall apart. And so me, I care about I don't waste my time on things that aren't going to work. I don't, and that's the maturity in me, when you choose to grow up and mature, being angry about something, you're going to realize you're still going to be angry, but it's about how you channel that anger. It's okay to acknowledge that was hurtful. But we also have a responsibility to ourselves to be aware and conscious of, kind of like what do we want, look within our needs. And I feel like a lot of people lack to look within themselves and kind of look to the world. And they're looking blindly because they don't know what they need. And sometimes it's painful. Like sometimes you have to dig deep through those traumas to be like, this is what I need, and this is why I need it. And that's scary to be vulnerable around people that haven't reached that low, that low, that ugly low that you're embarrassed. You don't want them to see it. And I think I feel like I'm going off. Like,
no, you're good. I think I would summarize that last point with your desire to be loved and to find love is what brought you to God.
Right. So that love is, it's in the Bible. You ask somebody what's love, and you'd be like, that's a good point. Like, seriously, like this person probably doesn't know what it's like to have somebody to be patient with them, to listen, to not judge. And my ultimate goal is, and I know that I will never reach this point because at the end of the day, we're all sinners. But my ultimate goal is to reach, like, to try and reach that level of love that Christ had. And that's the only, and I don't care what's going on around me. I don't care, just as long as I'm spreading that love and bringing glory to God for it. And it's funny. I do my best to lead by example in every aspect of my life, whether it's in the congregation, whether it's at work, whether it's me driving down the street, dealing with road ragers. I feel like that's the number one thing that's important to me. Not this cancer. This cancer is giving me the ability to do that. And I'm happy. And that's what makes it worthwhile to me. For somebody to come up to me and, like, for example, I went to get my fluids yesterday, and yesterday was a little bit of a heavy morning. And so, I go in, and the lady at the desk, she knows me, and she's like, "Is something wrong? You're not your normal upbeat self." And for people to see that, especially like back then, I never used to look upbeat. Never. I was never an approachable person. So for me to like transition from that to being this upbeat, approachable, like friendly person, it really does make me want to like look at my old self to be like, wow, I didn't know how much I was carrying. And I think it would be like a major shock if I saw myself. I forgot.
No, you're good. It's almost 11 o'clock.
Really?
Wow.
Time has gone by so quick.
So, I think my last question for you is, you're currently in chemo. You'll find out in 2 months if the cancer is responsive. Our congregation has been praying for you, but you have a really interesting perspective on death. And so what is the prayer? What do you request people pray for you? Because I think that's really powerful. A lot of people ask for God to heal them.
I'm not looking for healing. I'm looking to bring, I'm looking for for me to do his will. And it doesn't matter if he allows me to live for 20 years or a month or a year. It doesn't matter to me. Just as long as I'm not, my request for prayers, I would say, is for me to make the best decisions that will bring glory to him, and for me to be able to set the example that he would like me to in this journey. I only want to do it right by his word, and that's the only thing that matters to me.
I think that's a wrap.
Okay, so is my mic still blinking and echoing and being obnoxious?
No, you're good.
So I think Providence wanted my mic turned off. wanted me not to be able to just like interject, and I'm sure asked my daughter Ashley wishes she had a mute button on her mom, just like what just happened there. But wow, I just want to say there were about 3 times especially where, here's what I would have said. When you said that therapy is really hearing yourself talk to someone, I'm just so thankful now that as you get to me, my therapists are my sisters in Christ and these women who know the word of God. And so to listen to myself talk in the presence of someone who can give me now biblical feedback, I love that you have that too. I love that you have basically the church as a therapist, because it's people that have been sitting at the feet of God and listening to God. Also, over and over again, I thought about what King David said. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. And to me, that, like, maybe I'm going to make you a t-shirt that has this psalm on it, because that seems to be your life verse. Your attitude is like of a 97-year-old person who, I don't know how you find that, but wow. At your age, to realize that it's good that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes, to see the value of that. And then thirdly, that God is love, and love is all that matters. You know, that priority of like, love is the thing, and God is love. Not, you know, when in communities that are in rebellion to God, they say love is love, and what they're saying is fornication is love. But when you realize that God is love and he's all that matters, and you surround yourself with people that get it, I couldn't be more grateful. So I'm just thankful that you have fit us in somehow in between working and chemo, fit us into this conversation. And unless you guys have something else, I'll go ahead and wind us down. And so maybe we've talked about maybe a part 2 to kind of like review some things that we've learned. We may or may not do that, but I'll put that out there for those who have listen to this amazing conversation. So I'll close down our conversation by saying this. I just hope people have learned, among other things from this talk, that the number of years in our lives is worlds less important than the depth of the meaning of our lives and in our lives. I mean, the more we know that we have not lived in vain, like the more that we know we've used our life to make the world better, that the less that we abhor death. And the more that we will agree with God that to live is Christ and to die is gain. And so I just really think a lot of young people are going to be inspired by Z's endurance and courage to go counterculture against the social pressures that come against these young women that may be listening here, from authority figures in their lives and pop culture, pushing them toward all that moral darkness. I think Z's life inspires those women to take their life back and to lay it at the cross and at the feet of Jesus Christ. So if you have stumbled upon this conversation online, may I suggest to you that your finding and watching this was not by random chance, but rather was the providence of God. You have virtually met a young woman tonight who has decided to use the opportunities and the abilities given only to her to make this world a better place, so that she can die like a warrior princess, courageously facing the enemy of her soul, trusting that as she transitions to her new home, her real home in the afterlife, that she was made for. Hopefully this is like 50 years down the road. We don't know. We don't know. Viewers don't know. That she can fall happily into the arms of the one who loves her best. And so may you be inspired by